to feedback. E3 edition. You can tell it's E3 because we have a table. It's glossy and shiny. We don't have weird things behind us.
It's tough. It's dirty.
You can also tell because we're at the LA Convention Center. Let's introduce our panel, which is also mega big today. Mega big?
Yeah.
Mega big.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Really big.
Eric
Tree
Etsy,
sized.
Blair Hood,
Yeah.
Morgan Webb, Nicole Zavalich, and Kevin Kelly. This is the final day of E3. That will probably become abundantly apparent in all of our faces and our voices as this thing goes on
And
for the
our
next
feet.
45 minutes.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about what usually you do at the end of E3 is you look at the three, really in this case, I think the four major companies, Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, and I think this time EA because they are a major player in the industry and have a press conference. But let's start with Microsoft. Eric, I'll just start with you. I mean, I think there's a lot of question if they actually put on a good face or not.
I mean, I think they proved that Kinect has some legs, and I think that's what I take away from most from Microsoft's presentation. Is like, yeah, I can see how it's going to expand beyond just casual games, how it can apply to the games that I like to play, the voice recognition stuff in Mass Effect 3, and the Ghost Recon Gunsmith demo. I mean, that stuff I thought was pretty cool. So, yeah, I like.
No,
I mean,
this.
But that
Oh,
actually.
my bad. My bad.
But even though I'll never want to play a
This was
game that
not
way, yeah, I don't want to play a game that way. It showed that you could do it. The way he was like loading and zooming and things
I
like
think what the
that.
press conference actually showed was that Microsoft has enough power to force companies to make Kinect games even though they don't want to and don't think it's cool.
I mean, it's kind of what Sony was trying to do with the Six-Axis.
Right.
And wisely said, okay, this is not fair to ask people to suddenly start going like this
Right.
in their game. I mean, I think one of the other things is that there was that immediate wow factor. You could hear it in the audience when they showed, like, oh, I can give voice commands in Mass Effect 3. And then about 5 minutes later, I really thought about it. And I'm like, why would I do that?
Right.
Right.
I mean, this really has not made anything easier.
Pushing the button, moving your joystick and pushing the button, it's not that hard.
But
Also something
I
I've been
don't know. I
training
disagree
with
with
for
that.
25 years of my life. I get to eliminate that one thing that has become so ingrained into my psyche that I don't think about it anymore. Finally, I can get rid of that.
I mean, you don't think it's cool just to be able to order like while you're playing, just be like, hey, Garrus, move up. Hey, such and such, go.
Squad commands was cool. For the
I do like
dialogue.
squad
The dialogue,
I
I agree.
But, no,
Dialogue's
but
silly.
squad commands, my problem when I'm trying to actually move my guys is not selecting the guy. It's finding the place and getting
Right.
the joystick over there, which I can't do. I mean, if I can say, move behind that third gray stone thing, I mean, that would be useful. But in this, it's just like Garrus. It's like, that's one of my buttons.
Right.
I can pick
You
a
people
button.
are missing everything here. Halo 4 is coming, and I'm very excited about it.
That was the
rest
biggest
of
surprise.
Were you surprised? though?
I was really
I
surprised.
was surprised that they had a
Really?
teaser trailer
Yeah.
Well, last I checked, Microsoft likes making money.
Yeah.
What?
I wasn't that
That's
surprised
crazy.
by Halo 4.
Yeah.
I
But
mean,
It's been a while since
Two
we've seen a
Halo
Halo game,
games.
so I mean.
So I was surprised we had two.
I've
No, we
almost
had-
forgotten about
we
the
had one.
franchise.
I mean,
Yeah.
you can't say that the graphical polish for Halo 1 it's not a Halo. I mean, we've all
I'm
played
gonna
that
buy
game.
it
We all
again
own
though.
that
So
game.
I'll get 2 copies
I was
now.
impressed with it. I thought it was cool. And the
I thought
button
it was
flip to
cool,
switch
but
between the
it's
two,
not-
that's kind of cool.
Have you seen it? Because I gotta be
Yes.
frank, at least on the TV that I was watching, the trailer they ran for the upgraded Halo 1 did
Yes.
not look as impressive as I anticipated. It didn't look like Reach, which I thought was kind of
Yeah.
what they were going to make
I
it
will
look
say
like.
that I thought the exact same thing, but once we were in the room with the presentation, you see it in front of you, and you're kind of thinking like, well, it doesn't look like Halo Reach or ODST did. But then he was like, I'm going to turn off the graphic upgrade, and it's just a button press, and they go back to old Halo, and you're like, oh, wow, that game looked
Oh,
like
that's what
crap.
it looks
Yeah,
like.
We remember it looking
Yeah.
a lot better than
Yeah,
it
exactly.
The rest of my brain is really
We're
good.
like, oh, this is amazing.
Just like I remember a lot of games being a lot more fun,
Yeah.
as it turns out they
Yeah.
actually are. But to your point, Kevin, and this is something that I didn't just see with Microsoft, but I thought was really evident, and we learned this yesterday when we were talking to Peter Molyneux about Fable Journey. Microsoft, I think, did a great disservice to a lot of their games in the way that they presented them. That Journey is actually an open world game. You develop a relationship with your horse like you do your dog in Fable 2. None of that was conveyed, and everyone took away from that and from Kinect Star Wars that it was an on-rail shooter, and they're not. And part of me is a little bit baffled that they didn't see that danger and get in front of it and really show that this is a core game.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't think anyone thought rail shooter is core game and how they could not have seen us interpreting it that way.
Can we, because you obviously demoed the Star Wars game in quite possibly the most adorable little sailor outfit I've ever seen you wear. And you actually said after your impressions, I was like, You're like, it's not a rail shooter. It's like, look pretty raily. And you're like, okay, well, it was kind of on rails, but it engaged you enough to where you
select
could.
your enemy and you could move forward. And at least, whereas I think Journey really does it, this
Right.
gave far more of the illusion to the player that you had some sort of autonomy in this world
Right.
than that demo.
Because
Sure.
on rails just kills it.
really does.
Even if there's just one path that you can go down, for some reason you moving down that path makes you feel like you're doing it. I don't
Right.
know what it is.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like, I don't expect I'll have that level of freedom ever with Kinect. If I think I have that level of freedom,
Right.
that's all they
Okay.
really need to
Yeah.
accomplish.
And then
It's
look,
really you.
and the Star Wars game was super active. So let me ask you this: 5-minute demo, right? You looked a little tired after. Is that a sustainable gameplay
That's-
experience?
I mean, granted, I already had fatigue from the previous
Right,
days.
right.
That was on display there. I don't know, and I think it's also how many tricks can the game have up its sleeve that you want to keep
Do
doing
you
it.
have
I mean,
to yell lightsaber on every time?
I didn't, and my lightsaber was there.
Did it just pick up your co-demoer screaming lightsaber?
Right?
He didn't-
Our kids in the
I
crowd
don't
going, "More
think he said it
lightsaber!"
either.
Like, oh,
Once
okay.
again, I think this goes back to my issue I've had year to year to year with Microsoft's press conferences, is that there's this strange plastic quality to the whole affair. And it's quite possible you don't need to say lightsaber on, but some jackass thought that would be
Right.
impressive because
Yeah.
it uses the voice commands. And I don't know. There's Microsoft and Don Matrick with that smile that he should run for California's governor if he's going to keep smiling that way.
Dana was really impressed with Disney Connect Disney Adventures
Disneyland.
Connect, whatever, the Disneyland Connect Adventure. She thought it was pretty amazing, and we did end up nominating it for one of our best of E3 things.
Right. I think I'm with Morgan on this one.
Can you read it in my face? I'm trying to be polite about it, but I want to be like, for real? For
She
real?
loved
well, I don't think we're the target audience. Are we
That's
right?
true.
No.
I don't mind that it exists for children, but I mind that we're talking about it.
Now, I do want to talk about Once Upon a Monster, because that impressed me. Not that I want to go play it or anything
You don't
like
wanna
that.
fly around like this all
But once again,
With a kid that's
kind
clearly
of,
not yours.
where do they get these children?
Not legally.
Really?
Not legally.
Fist
What
bump.
central casting? Strange, creepy children. It's like the Jake Lloyd school on this.
Yeah, and like Caucasian male
does that
adult,
kid look like?
8-year-old Asian kid. This makes sense.
Yeah.
Put these two together.
But when they showed the Sesame Street game, those are mini games I know have been present in other Kinect games and just in other games. But when Elmo asks you to do it, it takes on a compelling nature that I've never really
Okay,
seen
I'll do
before.
it.
And it looks like Elmo rather than like
Get right
a
on it.
red block.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I honestly think that could be, that shows to me the value of Kinect. And once
Yeah.
again, it shows
Yeah.
that it's not for us.
I was just bummed that Microsoft didn't even touch on their Summer of Arcade, which actually has a really strong lineup for this summer. They didn't mention that at all in their press conference. The games are playable at the booth, but
They were
Yeah, but they're going to
so
change the way we're
focused-
going to watch television.
yeah, with their
With-
live TV, which I
Yeah.
don't really know even.
I have a
what-
TV.
They
So-
glossed over
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
I really
Well,
think.
it's also, they couldn't name a single domestic broadcasting partner.
Yeah.
They named ones that are foreign.
It was
and
very conspicuous.
Yeah.
we all work for Comcast, which is a very large company. There's also Time Warner Cable and DirecTV. I don't see them exactly just saying, "Oh yeah, please, completely usurp our delivery service."
No, but I mean, there are sort of alternate TV options now, so I don't think it's impossible that it's going to happen. There's Hulu and there's a lot of these services. Like they're becoming more open to.
But I mean,
Different viewing.
Microsoft just doesn't seem to have a clear message on, are you really trying to just get into full media? Because
Right.
like, last year it was ESPN. It's these kind of pissant
Yeah.
steps that no one even talks about.
Well, don't forget they
following
announced
year.
the IPTV thing in 2007.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's still not even here. We're still talking
I
about
think-
it's coming.
I mean, the fact of the matter is, I think on a bandwidth level, we're so far behind every other country on the planet that until we get to a point
Yeah.
where you can actually stream stuff on a consistent basis and you don't have to worry about things just pausing in the middle of probably the most important part of what you're watching, it's
works
never
out that
really
way.
going to be a
Maybe
real
they should
reality.
focus more on getting Steve Ballmer to head the FCC
Yes.
than trying to get broadcast television on my
Exactly.
Xbox. Let's move on to Sony, because all the eyeballs were on them.
Yeah.
Because I'll start with you, Morgan. Do you think that Jack Tretton's mea culpa was sufficient?
I think it was the best that he could have done. I feel like it was sincere. They really are sorry. They didn't.
They really do seem
just,
that way.
And what they had to do was just mention it, talk about it, and move on, because you don't want to talk about the rest of the press conference, because then that's everyone's takeaway. You want to get it out of the way, and in the end, remember that they have a great lineup for this holiday.
Yeah.
Do you think it was a mistake they didn't have Butler there?
Yeah, there was no
I think
Kevin
so.
I
Butler.
don't like him.
I know
I
you
don't
don't.
think
I think
he's
he's
I
funny.
so
don't
funny.
get it.
Oh, I
She
think
doesn't
he's
like
hilarious.
Disneyland. She doesn't like Kevin
I
Butler.
know.
I think he's
Kevin
funny,
Butler was
but-
once a
I
kid
don't
and
like
she hates
Disneyland
kids.
On the
because
Connect.
I am a grown-up.
Look, comedy,
What?
as
I don't like
X-Play
Disneyland.
knows,
It's manufactured whimsy, and I don't find it whimsical.
now, as X-Play knows very, very well.
I do not.
This
That
is
was
the
the
girl
most
who was just
adamant
playing with a
anti-whimsy.
tank.
No.
I know. Mini tank for
Hey,
hours.
look at this.
That's real whimsy, guys.
Now, X-Play knows from years of doing this that comedy can fail very, very easily.
Yeah.
And I think that there was just too much danger. If they knocked it out of the park with Kevin Butler, it would have probably been great. But that could have looked really crass, and like it would have
Right.
undermined what Jack Tretton said. I have always said that they need to use Tretton more. There's something I find, he is the anti-Matt Trick. I find him affable, I find him very personable, and I found that his sorry was, I'm glad it came from his mouth, because it does read as something very
It
sincere.
came up as very sincere.
Yeah.
Now, what followed the mea culpa was one of the largest data dumps of information, which I couldn't help but wonder. What you thought, Kevin? It was almost like they really want to distract you from what just happened prior to
Yeah.
that.
Well, it was all move, coming to all these things and video screens, and Ken Levine telling us he's loving Move and putting
Well,
Bioshock
he
on their
hates
new
Move,
handhelds
that
and
Sony
everything.
called him and pressured him into loving Move.
Yeah, it's like
Which
Sony.
was
It's like when
weird.
Sony called Gabe Newell, and they were like, "Hey, listen, we have to talk."
Here's the thing. We will have you murdered.
Yes.
Do you like life?
We can do that.
Yeah.
You want your internet to work? We can fix that.
Right.
But all of that stuff that they revealed, and also the setup of their stage, they had those 3 giant discs. People were so winded by the time they got up there. They were like,
Oh, Ken went to the
"I'll see if I can show you medieval madness." And that was a little crazy.
Well, from what I also gathered, I'll just put this out there: the LA Sports Arena, not a nice place. It really felt like being in someone's shoe from 1963.
Oh.
yeah.
And by that time of the evening, too,
someone's
everyone's
shoe.
tired. Everyone's been to like
it was
4
the
press
fourth
conferences
press
already.
conference of the day.
They didn't
I-
have cupcakes
I-
beforehand, so
They did have food trucks
credit where
outside.
credit's
It's kinda
due.
So there was that tiny groan when he said, "Well, for the next 90 minutes, we're going to heard a little bit of that," and then later when we talked more about Vita and that's the carrier, that's also there was that audible
groan.
Yeah.
I mean, what happened, I think, is I understand what Sony was thinking. They wanted, prime time, and they wanted to, Microsoft always got that 24-hour news cycle that was just them because Sony
Yeah.
hadn't talked yet. They got into the next cycle, but they put Vita at the very end of the show, at the very end of a long day, and while I was a little bit more fresh, I think most of my colleagues that were in there, but I think that they couldn't generate the level of excitement in the
Yeah.
crowd there that I think they deserve to. Though, yes, they did choose AT&T, and why they didn't see that one coming, I don't know.
There were
I think they
boos
just
from
shouldn't
that.
have
Yeah.
mentioned it.
That's what I think too.
They
because
had
did-
to. I mean,
But
No,
they
they
did
did not.
know.
Just don't mention it, and then after the press conference, you
send a
can
press
kind of
release.
like
RTG.
put it in the
Good
press
point.
release.
Don't give us the
When
Death
you
Star
call
logo.
it, it does help
Right.
ease
Well,
the
that's
pain.
what I would
Yeah.
have.
Why we want 3G? They were not talking about such complex connectivity needs.
Yeah,
Right.
why do we
they
need
didn't
it?
talk about multiplayer. They didn't talk about, I assume there's some social networking things that they're going to
Right.
slip into that. But, so that would say, okay, we have 3G.
Right.
But they didn't.
One can only assume that what they're talking about when they say that is that it's more for downloading demos and maybe some content, because I can't imagine them going to AT&T and going, okay, here's the deal. We're going to have an online component to all of our games that people are going to want to use. And we want to go with you because if they're fighting in a game, we need to make sure that game, there's not going to be any lag and that nobody's going to get disconnected in the middle of the match. There's no way that they didn't think that through. So I think what we're going to see with those games is a lot less competitive online functionality than we're hoping for.
Maybe leaderboards, like we'll be able
Yeah,
to
I
share
don't think
after
we're gonna
we
see
play.
it.
I feel like there'll be more
leaderboards. I don't need to
multiplayer.
constantly be checking
Yeah,
the
I mean,
leaderboards.
PSP does have like a comic book reader, a book reader in Japan. Maybe we'll be able to see that functionality here. They
Yeah.
cut that functionality out of the American PSP, but it actually does exist in other versions.
But they are trying to do a lot more of that PS3 to the Vita, to the
Transfarming?
PS3, the transfarming and whatever they're going to end up doing. So people are going to play some of those PS3 games that they would normally play multiplayer people. Maybe not Starhawk, but something. And then
I
don't know how that's going to
It's
work.
going to be a massive failure, though, right? I mean, you can't. We've all had it. I assume we've all had something on AT&T at some point, and
I have
it's not going to
AT&T.
last. Like
we're
it's
in LA, so I think
Well,
in other,
I
other
think
regions
the
it's a
other
little better,
mistake
but yeah, I
is
would say
having Kazuo
Right, for
announce it. Now, granted, he did run SCEA, but he has been in Japan now for the past 3 years. It just, because he said it, it also had that out of touch feeling. That once again, this
It
is
was
Sony
just- it was
Japan
very
not
out of touch.
understanding the American market. Because once again, I just have to believe Tretton and his people were like, AT&T is a pejorative in a press conference.
Right.
Yeah, you can't expect. I think people it wasn't booing, but it was just
Right.
everybody being like, oh.
There were a couple of boos.
Serious
And
comments.
Kaz,
Yeah.
there was that awkward
The
moment where
booing
Kaz
didn't
went,
come through.
Oh, yeah.
Plans in the audience were revealed at that moment.
Yeah.
Let me
Clap
ask you a
right
question,
You're
Morgan.
the
You
best.
can probably speak to this a little more because you know more of the tech side of phones. You know, I was talking to Chris Hardwick about it because
Yeah.
we were doing Ubi right before that, and I said, "What? Why? And he said, and I don't know a lot about it, but he said the network that AT&T operates on, there's more of an opportunity for them to expand to a global market as opposed to Verizon needing to ship different hardware for different regions. And do you think that has anything to do with it?
Well,
And he was
there's
just
different-
speculating at that point.
There's different chips inside of it,
Right.
The two things, but they all work in all different places. So
Right.
I just
Steve
find
Ballmer
it
needs
odd.
to be the head of the FCC. That is my new decision from today's feedback.
Well, also, AT&T,
Congressman,
I mean, they
Congressman,
paid-
Congressman.
You know, rumors had it up to like
my
$18
Ballmer
per
person.
month per plan to Apple.
Sure.
So that was like a huge revenue stream
Right.
for Apple. So maybe Sony's
There's got to be
getting-
some sort of deal, right?
We'll get some
Absolutely.
kind of
Well,
kickback
why-
from the plan.
I know they actually released that for every iPhone that was sold on AT&T at some point, they literally paid Apple $600 for the They were like, "Thank you. Here's
For each
$600
iPhone?
for each
Wait,
iPhone."
no
So-
way.
Yes.
That would be a
Yeah.
fortune.
So
you just give them an iPhone.
well, they don't make any money.
Yeah.
They don't make any money off the
We're doing the
hardware.
contract.
They make all of the money off of the
This is
contract,
our most
right?
technical discussion
And
ever.
so maybe
And
they've
part
got
of the
some sort
problem.
of deal with Sony where they're like, "We're just gonna, you know what? We'll subsidize. We'll pay for the entire production
We'll
of
give
this
you
stuff."
but would
$1,000.
anybody pay a monthly fee to have their PSP on a cell phone network?
No.
Negative.
No.
To Kevin's point, given how tired
first time
we're
we all
supposed to
heard
be,
something.
this is fascinating that we let the discussion go here. Let's talk about what I think was the game changer for Sony, which was the price on the Vita. $250 puts it completely in line with the 3DS, and I think it's very hard just on the side-by-side to not look at the Vita as a better deal.
But I also think the
in terms of what you're
3DS is
getting.
overpriced. I mean, I think the 3DS is too expensive.
Oh, I assume it's
So
going to
it's
drop.
Naturally, it's going to come down.
Yeah.
Of course.
Right in the holidays.
It is
right before
Right.
it
But
goes,
that, it also sounds like $249, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Sony has said, hey, we're going to take a hit on this. It is remarkably underpriced for the hardware that's probably inside of that. I, mean, I think the screen alone
Yeah.
is
They do
incredible.
take that price hit, but versus Nintendo, who tries to make money off every console, right?
Right.
So,
Now, have you guys played the Vita?
sure.
I have not left the stage in the past 3 days, but
Okay.
have one of you had an opportunity
I've
to?
played
I've
it.
played it as well.
Yeah, I stopped by the booth.
I
and
think
played
it's a great piece of tech. I
It
mean, I
is
love
cool.
And
the
I
touch
was
screens.
not
I
a
love the
believer when I
analog.
saw the press conference, but as soon as I held it, I was like, I get it.
That Uncharted game on
it's
there is.
That's the thing.
Beautiful.
Having
That's gonna
not seen
sell
it in person,
system.
does it channel a console experience?
It
does the
does,
software
absolutely.
look like really
The game
does?
looks
Uncharted
like a
looks like
console.
Yeah, was it
Uncharted.
the screen or is it the second analog stick? Because all I've ever wanted
both
is
of
a
those.
second
Oh,
analog
Yeah,
stick.
if anyone's ever wanted
Yeah.
a PSP, the
Exactly.
second
It's
analog
both of those.
stick.
It's the back touchscreen, which
The
comes
6
into play a lot.
axis, you can use for sniping, which for only sniping and taking pictures in Uncharted. It's the only reason you use 6 axis. Which why else would you want to use that?
Right.
But for sniping, it just feels when you get the headshot, it's because you did it. It's your skill, and it just
It
feels.
is,
How did
I
you
guess,
feel about the
less
touch
of a
controls in
dramatic
Uncharted?
movement than if you're on Connect, if you're on Move.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're-
yeah.
you know.
But the back touchscreen, I have really small hands, so I couldn't even reach it very well. So that's going to be a problem for me.
Right.
But
Nyko's
okay.
making finger extenders, so
That's
you can get
crazy.
that.
Nyko was apparently
Perfect.
fixing everything.
Yeah.
with their Connect
Want to look
thing.
even more ridiculous on public transportation? Have some finger extenders. And then you
That would be awesome.
applause while you're doing this on a bus. It's going to be awesome.
Just really Nicole silly
Maybe they'll make a
games.
mini Vita for the small hands.
Yeah.
It's
They'll
called the
smallify.
PSP.
I mean, I also I get the hope that because it has 2 analog sticks, that developers who traditionally make traditional games for
Yeah.
a big boy console don't have to rethink everything to try to fit that experience
Right.
onto a single analog stick. I mean, it must be easier for developers to work on that platform.
Right,
Well, I
and
can only assume
that's something that I really worry about with the Wii U. But we can talk about that in
Yes,
a little
actually.
bit.
Hey, actually, matter of fact,
Oh, but one
I'm
more
gonna
thing
throw a
about
bullet point.
like
Look
Ken
at that.
Levine coming out saying
Nintendo.
Bioshock is going to be moving onto the Vita. One of the few developers that could make an announcement like that, not showing anything
Right.
that could still have an impact. And I was like,
And then
we
he's
were all
embracing
impressed
Move.
that's coming. Yeah.
Did he say where that Bioshock game would take place in the timeline?
No, he just said
No,
it's in the
he-
Bioshock
He just said
universe.
Bioshock and Vita, and I think Kevin's right. That's
Yes.
all like.
Okay, please.
Is Ken having another kid? Because I just thought about the fact that Ken was literally in every single press conference as one of the developers that was in a video supporting the
yeah,
new
super
hardware.
excited for the new hardware. I
Yeah,
love
something's
this
wrong
new
with Ken
hardware.
Levine. We should ask
I
him.
think it's credit to
They
him
cloned
that having seen the Bioshock Infinite demo, he really is kind of at the vanguard of, hey, I'm doing something interesting with games, and if they want to, if any company wants to burnish their image with, sort of top line innovative game developer, you kind of call it Ken Levine.
Yeah.
And he has a game coming out
I
next
hope,
year.
I hope we do get a lot of just
Small game.
straight ports for the PSP Vita,
Yeah,
and
I agree.
not have to worry too much about integrating touchscreen, integrating all these things.
Yeah,
like
no, sure.
if it's easy to port something over there, that would be fantastic.
And if it enhances the game, put it in. But yeah.
Yeah, and make it available, but don't let that,
Limit.
don't let that limit exactly like
Which
what
I
games
think
you
is
put on there.
perfect segue for the Wii
Okay.
U.
Speaking
Wii
of
U.
limits,
Yeah.
Okay,
So
so
if
the
you had
Wii.
time to process this,
Yeah.
we
I'm
were
trying to.
dumbfounded
Yeah,
at
at
the
the end
Nintendo
of the press conference,
for.
I was like, what? What? So, okay.
Yeah.
so that's new.
I'm so
Thinking?
confused because the name doesn't help them at all. The Wii U makes you think that it's a peripheral for the Wii that you already
Yeah.
own.
And they called it a controller.
Or a
Yeah,
university
it's a
where you study
controller.
Nintendo.
I mean, really, I'm sorry I'm being blunt, but this is day 4 of E3. I mean, that press conference showed to me how Nintendo can crawl so far upside its own ass that it does not even know what's coming out of
There's
its
an
mouth.
image.
Because no one walked out of that place going, I get it.
There's no reason for press to walk out of a press conference
Right.
more confused than when they walked in.
We traffic uncertainty. That's why we are the press.
But the general public loved it. Like they would see that golf
Well,
demo
their
and they think
stock
immediately, wow,
plummeted,
this is
so-
amazing.
They loved
Someone.
it, but they still don't necessarily understand what
Yeah,
it is.
I think
Maybe
they're
they loved it
more
because they're like,
confused
oh, I'll
than
spend
enamored,
$60
yeah.
on a new controller and I'm going to have all this fun stuff to
Even
do.
getting our hands on it, it's complicated. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily the easiest thing to use. I mean, and
Right.
granted, we haven't tried. This is all tech demos still, but I mean,
But I mean,
They got a
also,
lot of
I think
road
all of us, it's the Wii effect. Had there been no Wii, had there been GameCube 2, and then they brought this out, I think all of us were like, whoa,
Yeah.
everything's changed. But we had the Wii with that promise that never really turned into like a completely new game experience. And yeah, we're a lot more jaundiced in looking at this. And what I saw were like tech demos and not a sense of how that's going to turn into
Right.
another game.
I just worry it's going to be very complicated, and I worry the developers aren't going to want to bother to rethink the
Yeah.
way they design games. And we saw that with the Wii. I mean, people were
exactly.
not willing to redesign the way they
Now,
thought about
the
things.
controller does have traditional interface, so
Right.
there is that way that you could just ignore the silliness and then be playing with
Ignore the
the
silliness.
biggest controller.
yeah,
in the
playing
world.
Darksiders 2 and being like, hey, I'm playing the same exact game on my
iPad with
Xbox.
controls.
If you're-
We're
if there's a-
plugging our classic
There's
controller.
a menu here and a TV here. I mean, if my menu's on the screen, am I gonna pause and look down? I mean, I don't understand why that's a
I
bonus.
think they're
And
still
how's this going
figuring
to work
that
with your
out.
tiny
but-
baby hands?
It's not gonna work
Not at
well.
all, right?
It's like a
Thank
T-Rex.
you.
Literally got it
We
in
need
one
those
hand.
extensions.
Well, I will say 2 things we found out yesterday that I thought were kind of surprising. One is it does not support GameCube titles at all.
Which is
Yeah.
And there's a lot of
stupid.
GameCube titles I still like to play on my Wii. Now I
Really,
won't be able to do
When's
that.
the last time you popped the GameCube?
Just the
title?
other day, I was
Mario-
playing
Super
Hulk
Mario
Ultimate
Sunshine.
I want to have fun
Great
with the
game.
Nintendo
Great
system.
game.
In your
Wow.
defense, though, this may be the
That's
only
totally
table where somebody actually has an answer to that question.
Yeah, I was
not-
actually going to say, it's like, I enjoy the fact that I have my Pikmin games for GameCube, but I don't think I've actually popped them in.
But the
or-
fact that
I
you
wanna play
could is
with
like,
it.
But
it's
I-
It's a little bit of a
Yeah.
No, and of course, like, I'm never getting rid of my sort of first generation PlayStation because
Right.
it's backwards compatible. When's the last time I
But
put one
then
of those
the
old
second
games
thing
there?
was
But
only
you had
I
the
don't know.
option.
It only supports one of those. I don't even know what they're calling that
Wii U
ginormous
controller?
Yeah, it only
Wii U
supports one
modes?
of those. So your console can only drive out HD video and the experience to one of those controllers. When you bring friends over and everybody sees this, everybody's going to want to be the one playing with that thing.
Well, you can give
Can't
them a
do
little
it.
Wiimote.
Yeah, they'll
and
feel-
tell them like clearly I don't like
But
you
it's
that
not-
much.
it's
As
not
a friend.
the screen,
Have a
use
little
this.
stick, and I'll have the Big Daddy screen.
So it's like, how can they market
You
this
say
as
it like
something
that,
new
and they
if
come
it's
over.
it's the same thing? It's
Right.
and which
No,
is
but
what,
it's the same thing in 1080p.
what,
Right.
what on that during
I
the
really
press
don't think
conference
that's an
they
agreement.
admitted that they used Sony and Xbox 360 images when they were showing Darksiders.
Oh, yeah.
That was 360
And
PS3.
Well, also, in my interview with Reggie following, I asked Reggie, I mean, is this 1080p? And he gave me this quizzical look like, well, you should have known that. They didn't say it. They were
No,
so
they
open
didn't.
They did
with
not.
everything.
Yeah.
They
And
glossed
this is
over
the
the
part,
HD part.
that just kind of confuses me. They did not show a proper game or something that showed integration into a real game experience. By not doing that and announcing this, I don't know what they just accomplished. Why not sit on all of this and let us see next
Yeah.
year
Right.
when they really can make a proper demonstration?
Well,
They're eating into Wii sales. I mean, they've
But think about it this
hurt
way:
themselves.
it's already leaked out there to some extent. It's in developers' hands right now. It's a whole revolutionary control scheme that it's
Yeah.
just going to get out there. If they don't get ahead of it, they have to kind of say to everybody, "Hey, this is what we're working on. This is the kind of opportunities that are coming down the pipe." I mean, that's the only thing I can
Also,
Once
think
again,
Sony
it's
of.
the theme
and
of bad
Microsoft.
messaging all week long.
But Sony and
from these
Microsoft are
guys.
so focused on their motion control that maybe Nintendo felt like a little threatened and they had to come out with something too.
And they
Oh,
need
how
to
about
talk about
Apple?
having
I
a
mean-
comparable system from a next-gen graphic standpoint. They need to kind of come out and
Yeah.
say, "Hey, listen, we're going to be able to compete with the big boys."
And here's the opportunity I think they had to kind of take control of something new when they introduced motion control for the first time. It's like, hey, we did something new. And we talked about this and we talked about it right after. There's an opportunity for them to make a handheld tablet that can be used in conjunction with something that you've already purchased. And if you have this tablet that does all the other things that an iPad does, like online functionality, browsing, and stream video, and all that stuff,
Not
it's
having
awesome.
Flash.
But having it but having it tethered to a set-top
you can't
box
leave
and
your house
not
with
letting
it.
and not allowing you to remove it from the
Or
house,
have
because the
more than
first thing
one.
that we said right after it was over was like, well, it's an iPad that you can use in
Yeah.
conjunction with your Wii. And Reggie said it's not a portable gaming device and it is not a tablet.
that's
And we're
true.
going to announce online things in the future, but the fact that it will not function without that box attached to that TV,
It's confusing.
you can't leave your living room with it.
The casual gamer who was not at the press conference is not watching this show, who probably owns a Wii. I mean, what are they going to make of this? I mean, I don't know how they're going to reach that audience and
It's
explain
almost
what
like
we
it's
ourselves
almost like
don't
an
fully
entertainment
understand.
device than a gaming
It's a
device.
remote.
It
It's
is.
like a wireless
Yeah, you
That's
can watch
I
TV
thought
on
that's
it.
exactly. I was like, oh, then a touchscreen universal remote for my Wii.
And
Is-
it's not,
but-
I mean, it's not having like shown the console itself at the conference.
And they didn't really
An
talk
image.
about
They
it.
showed an image.
It's
That's 'cause they
really
know
gonna
they're
confuse
wrong.
people.
And they push
They're
it
like,
out on
let's
their
just gloss
website.
over it.
They have all the specs on what the
Yeah,
console
they
is right
do.
now, very broad and generic
But
processor.
some detail, like 4 USB ports.
So let's
yeah,
clarify then for the people at home, and by at home, Blair Herder, who doesn't even know what this thing does. Well, tell me about the set-top box. Are things going in it? Is there
this
storage?
way?
Is
It
there?
goes
disc tray.
This way.
Okay, it's got a disc
There's
tray.
a fold-down door in the front, which looks like it'll hide the USB ports.
SD cards.
SD card. It takes SD cards.
So
and
does it have internal storage
yeah.
then?
Great, we can get
Yes.
what 16 gigs. now?
Yeah, right.
That's-
Yeah.
It'll still work with a sensor bar that you'll have to have, like for your Wiimote.
Okay.
And that's about all we know about it.
Yeah.
And you plug it in the wall.
I mean, Reggie during the interview, and I'd like to
It
say,
takes
go back
power.
and watch the
Confirmed.
interview. And how many
Pikmin
times does
power.
Reggie begin his answer with
Candidly.
and I'm getting
Yeah.
a completely strange, ambiguous answer.
Well, you talked about eating into Wii sales. The only 2 Wii titles they're showing
I
here
know.
are Skyward Sword
They-
and Kirby Wii.
They have it's classic Nintendo where they just abandon support for the old hardware as they start to ramp up for the
And
new
we
one.
didn't see a Pikmin.
No.
They said one is
They
coming.
said one is coming.
But they
Okay.
didn't show us anything.
They didn't
But
give
they've
us
said
a year.
Pikmin is coming for like 20
Yeah, I
years.
know.
in
Also, the
future.
sun's going to come up in 2013.
I
Just,
was about to say the
just
same
wanted to
thing.
give you guys
Oh
a heads
man,
up
I
on
so
that.
hope something happens and we're just,
I
I'm just like
mean-
Blair, look, you were so
I told you, bro.
What they need is though, like Wii Sports
You're
is
the
to
Nintendo
Wii,
of this
they need
office.
a new franchise that defines what this system is, and I think
Well, they
until
have
then,
Parrot. They do have Parrot.
Oh, the parrot. Oh, the bird cherry blossom video with the
Oh,
koi
that's it.
pond.
That's
That
just
bird.
weird.
What does it show me
What
anything?
does it have to do
was
with
that?
anything?
It was
I
a
like,
video.
Something's gonna happen. It's gonna go and it's gonna go find a Pikmin, or it's gonna do something. It's gonna be a.
I assume I was having a flashback. I'm glad you guys actually saw that because I thought it was just me. I was a little confused. I want to touch a little bit on EA because to me it was a very strange
on the
press
second page.
conference. I'm on the second page.
Oh, I don't know. Where is this? Where is this? I can't.
Yeah, it might not be on the page. We're going off page. I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
Now Blair's
Crazy, man.
lost.
This is crazy.
There goes Blair.
Stop down.
Games are impressive.
Games are
Best line of the week.
so fun to do during a live press.
EA, who I thought had the strongest press conference last year, where all they did was show game and demo it and game and demo it, and I was like, wow, that's what I want. It was a very strange job. One which I feel was deeply affected by the fact that I looked like they had to hit an hour mark for certain programming needs on
Yeah.
other television channels, and as a result, they short-shrifted a lot of their games, and I think they didn't get much energy out of it. And then their big showstopper, which everyone's been waiting to see, Battlefield 3, might be the prettiest boring demo I have ever seen
It
in my
was
life.
such an odd choice, and I don't think anyone's really been able to figure out why they went with that.
I mean,
I mean, those first 2 minutes
Tanks
were
are a
gorgeous and
moneymaker,
beautiful.
guys.
Yeah, but then
But it went on
eventually,
forever.
like, well, okay.
Where's my tank?
Wow,
I
I
dropped
finally
my
got the
tank.
supermodel going on a date with me, but she has
Man,
nothing
man,
to
man,
say.
man,
Or she will not shut up about herself.
Here was the demo right there.
October 25th.
Remember the first Modern Warfare demo at the Microsoft press conference that was in Santa Monica,
Yeah.
where it was the stealth, and I know that I got the sense that the reason they showed that one is there were sudden concerns about showing too much violence.
Yeah.
Since then, no one seems to have those concerns anymore, so that couldn't have been driving EA's thought
And
process.
you know what that Modern Warfare demo that they did was, I mean, they did one of their biggest action sequences,
Yeah.
and it looked really exciting.
Maybe
It was
one
really
game
good.
looked prettier, but one game looked more fun.
Yeah.
There's no- I think the other thing is they trotted out Old Republic again.
Okay.
Without the one key piece of news,
That's still a
all of us
game.
won.
Yeah, no.
How is that not out
Wait,
yet?
game.
We
We've
do
talked-
have some. You have some.
No.
we know something.
Yes, we
might be
may know
coming.
things, but I'm just not going to be
We're not
talking
allowed to
about
talk
them
about
here
it.
on this.
Can we-
It is something
can we
everyone
stop
wants to know,
down?
and
I
a
don't
release
know
date
anything.
also.
Well, we did have I did a demo yesterday on the stage,
Yeah.
and it was emphatically said 2011. We do know from their last investor conference they have created wiggle room into 2012.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, MMOs launch dates are very much a moving target. It's just a
Right.
different animal because you have the back end, you have all that. It's not like a traditional game. They have to be sensitive to their investors. If they claim a date and then they miss it, they are exposed to legal actions from their shareholders. Having said that, they also need to know that what I just said is not fair knowledge for everyone to assume.
Sure.
And this weird, like, let's talk about it and not talk about it. I mean, I think it's losing some steam in a lot of consumers' eyes.
They shouldn't have started their media blitz so early.
No,
Yeah, right.
and also look, if
Feels
you've
like
played
it's
MMOs
years
in the
ago. What was
past,
years
It was.
there's an expectation as far as MMOs are concerned that when the game is launched, it's not going to be perfect.
Well,
And-
do you
and
think that anymore?
I do think that. I think DCUO launched and there were things wrong. I think Rift, they were
We
still
accept
updating.
patches.
They,
We accept
they
it.
release patches on a daily basis.
Yeah.
It's okay if it doesn't work completely.
I
So
don't know.
how broken is this game
Well, no, DC
that they can't even
Universe,
say,
also,
listen,
the DC Universe Online didn't cost upwards of $300 million to make, which is
Right.
what is estimated
That's fair,
for this
I
game.
guess.
There needs to be a return on investment, like, immediately, once again, or those shareholders. I mean, look,
Right.
let's be fair. Things are not doing that well for Electronic Arts.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how much longer Rick Catello can stand up to his board of directors with
Right.
their share price doing that. I mean, the Old Republic is kind of, I think, a do or die for them.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that's why I think that
They can't
this
come out
thing has
something
got
if
to
it's not
launch
a huge
perfectly.
success.
And the one
And
thing you
it's-
know how it is, without enough servers, and that game has such demand that
Right.
it
Oh,
could
yeah.
turn off everybody if it's
Right.
trying to get.
Well, and we're about to go into Skyrim, which was just announced and is coming out this year. It
Yeah.
looks so awesome. and that's the
300
RPG experience.
hours?
Blair's drooling
If you
really
play it
quick.
10 times, it's
Can we
300.
get a napkin for
Oh.
Blair?
There's an attractive.
I mean, let's
Dragons are
Is that I mean, would you say once again, you three have been on the floor of this place a little more? I mean, it seems like that's where the majority of chatter. I love saying chatter because I feel like I'm like SEAL Team 6. But I mean, is a lot of it around Skyrim?
Skyrim, Bioshock,
Battlefield 3.
Battlefield
People
3.
talk about
Everyone's
Prey
talking
2
about
a lot.
Battlefield 3.
Because tanks are fun.
Yeah, tanks
Well, they
are
don't
fun.
do the
Thankfully,
tank
yeah,
demo.
the demo
Right,
in the
right,
behind
right,
closed
right,
doors is
right, right, right.
multiplayer and not tanks.
Yeah.
But
And very fun.
I like
Very
to
fun.
I like to expand on that. I feel that Prey 2 may be the surprise of this,
love
this
Prey 2
conference.
more, right?
Can I have a hug?
Yeah, can we? I mean,
Oh,
Prey 2
can we
really
talk about that?
Yes.
though? What are you
Yes.
guys hearing on the floor? Because we hear it here. It's like no matter what people are bringing, they're like, "Oh, sweet demo." Hey, by the
Well,
way, did you
see,
see that Prey 2
The
game?
problem with Prey 2
It's so
is the name
different.
Prey 2. They should have called it Prey, something.
Prayer.
Even Prey.
But
And
Prey,
so there's
yes.
like nobody
It's
was
different,
saying like,
but
what
it's
happened to
kinda
Tommy?
similar.
I know, exactly.
Yeah.
He's such an iconic
He's
character.
there though.
I,
He's there.
the
I've
main,
been
not the
defending
main
this
player.
game for the
But I'm-
past 3 months to my colleagues.
I'm with you,
Like,
I'm with you,
It's
I
not
love it.
Prey. And I'm like,
It's
who the
not.
f- wants Prey?
That's back of the box
Boring.
copy right there. It's not Prey.
There's a lot of Native Americans that were abducted by aliens that need some answers emotionally.
Well, go talk
they
to
want
Turok.
another Prey.
Storytelling
Talk to
is done to them.
Turok.
No, they're not racist Native Americans. They're just Native Americans.
At times in that demo, when you're up in that bar and you're looking for information, I was like reminded of Mass Effect, and I'm like,
Very
this
Mass
game looks
Effect.
fantastic.
And he wasn't even really playing the game. He was just like, I'm just gonna take a bounty mission.
Right. I
Yep.
mean, and
That's the best part about
I
it.
think where Bethesda may have made a misstep is that they're showing what is fundamentally a side mission. I think showing something a little bit meatier that helps say, like, we may not have Tommy as your playable. Tommy's in the game, and there's a strong narrative.
Yeah.
Might have helped position it a bit more. But the game it reminds me of is Anachronauts. Not in the way it plays, but that's the last time I can remember. Roaming around a very dirty science fiction world. Anachronauts was the blast of the Ion Storm
Yeah.
games. Tom Hall was the creator. It was a hysterically funny turn-based RPG.
No idea.
But it was just a very dirty sci-fi world.
You
It was
were
kind of
born.
Not
fun.
the slightest.
You weren't even alive.
Okay.
at that point.
Speaking of old RPGs, Atari's bringing Gamma Worlds to the
Really?
consoles. Yeah. If you ever played nerdy Gamma Worlds back in the day, it was their sci-fi D&D.
I didn't
It
play
was-
Gamma Worlds.
It didn't
I
take
missed
off
out,
like D&D
apparently.
did, but
Kevin, party one. Your table's ready.
I'm gonna go over here.
It didn't take off like D&D did.
I want to return to Skyrim. Not so much talking about how pretty and how awesome it looks, but what are we hearing now? About 300 hours of gameplay?
Well,
That's
they
the
were
game
saying
out.
that they were saying like, oh, there's so many now that we can't possibly count. I mean, it's the kind of world that you could spend
Right.
a lot of time in. Like, even if you kind of finished everything, you just wander around.
There's
You
so
start
many
a
There's a lot of
different
worlds to
character.
You can quantify it. 150 dungeons, right?
Yeah.
On average, you're going to be
Endless
spending an
dragons.
hour exploring those dungeons. So that's
Right.
150 just on dungeons alone. I
pretty
would
cool.
assume. There's probably 2-hour dungeons and
yeah.
30-minute dungeons. But
If you see
let's
it,
assume
you can
also
go
the-
there.
And
Hey,
these
what kind of
dungeons
dungeon
are
would you
much
like?
bigger than any dungeon
the
that I've seen in
30-minute
Elder
Right.
Tommy
Scrolls
got
games.
kids.
So, I mean,
And
it's,
there's so many great things that they've learned over the years making these games
Yeah.
and making Fallout that they're going to sort of integrate, sort of how the characters have so much life and they actually react to you. I mean, I hate walking, even now, like after some of these games, I hate walking into a place, at someone's house, like searching all of their possessions, smashing all of their stuff,
don't care.
and then
They
they're
probably
like,
hate it too.
they're like, hello, would you
How
like
are
to
you?
buy something? Hello, would you like to buy something?
We on X-Play have made so much fun of that in the past that Todd Howard has actually become very sensitive to it and has made efforts. The point is, with a game that big and getting this much attention, what's going to happen at the end of the year? Because Fallout 3 pretty much obliterated all the releases around it because
Right.
everyone knows with that one game, I mean, for $60 on that game and $60 on a game that's cool but 10 hours, like the bang for buck, you know, it's like it could really hurt a lot of the other releases, I think.
You're
Well,
not
what are
gonna
the
go out
big?
and
We
spend
have
money.
Skyrim, we have Modern Warfare 3, we have
But
Battlefield
what if they
3.
do an RPG or deep
Yeah, I feel
releases
like
around that?
super
I think
casual
Skyrim's the only
gamers
one
aren't
that's
going to
there.
consider Skyrim.
Yeah.
No. But I guess what's always stunned me are the sales figures
Yeah.
on these Bethesda games because I would think it's far more narrow.
Oh, no.
And then these things just blow up.
Yeah.
It's
And I feel like they're
Kinda
pretty.
likes dragons.
They're pretty done with
yeah,
the game.
Blair was the time of my life.
Remember the demo that we saw pre-E3? They showed us, oh yeah, this is a thing we just added. There's a hunter-prey mechanism, and there's a fox coming along, and he starts chasing a rabbit. It wasn't quite working yet, but they've added stuff like that into the game. So like, it's a dynamic world that this fox can catch the rabbit, and eat him, or the rabbit gets away. And I'm like, the fact that you're putting that kind of stuff in means like, all right, we've been done with this core stuff for a little while.
If we're adding bunnies, they're pretty done.
Yeah.
No. What about the Attack of the Threes? Gears of War 3, well, Battlefield 3, Uncharted 3, Mass Effect 3.
which we have a date for.
All of these games look fine and strong. I mean, is anyone feeling genuine enthusiasm and I can't wait?
I wasn't
Yeah.
until.
Which one?
Mass Effect.
Yeah, certainly.
Uncharted.
See, I guess I expected to
And
be a
Gears,
little
all
bit
three,
more
actually.
that way on Mass Effect than it kind of turned out to be. It's just because I feel that I haven't been away from them long enough to miss them. It's,
I miss them. And when they showed us the demo with the Krogan princess or whatever, I was like, there's a Krogan princess? Yes.
Do you guys even care though that they're like wrapping up stories? Like I don't care that it's the end of this particular trilogy.
No.
I just want to keep playing more of
I
these
might
games.
try
Like
it,
it
yeah.
has nothing to do with the story.
They'll make something else that
They'll
we'll
make
like.
something else.
yeah, I mean, I'm glad that the trilogy's coming to an end. I like these
Yeah.
universes.
Yeah.
That's really what the appeal is. It's not like I want the story. I mean, well, actually, with that, let's talk about Assassin's Creed, about kind
Okay.
of beating something into. I mean,
I disagree.
here's the story that won't go away, and it's
But
been
wait,
very strong up until
I don't
this
want
point.
it to go away.
Yeah, I'm not ready for it to go away.
Well, I mean, okay,
I like
the
the story,
Ezio,
actually.
His story's going
Ezio
on.
timeline.
Yeah, no, I know, but I'm
Yeah.
saying at this point, I'm not sick of it. Like, I don't want it to go away. I'm enjoying this timeline. I will be done maybe to move on to something else. I just didn't find Altair a very satisfying hero.
Right.
And it was great that I really connected with Ezio.
I guess what I felt, and I've always felt that I wish Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood had been merged into one game and they took out some of the chaff. And I think you have had one of the strongest games of this generation.
It would have been too big, I think.
It would have been too big. I agree.
Yeah.
'Cause
Or they would have made a little
Brotherhood
less
is
money.
Yeah, it would have a lot less money.
It's very big, and it explores like a lot of new mechanics.
Yeah.
And that I think they needed to really build on the previous games. Like to introduce all of that at the same time, I don't think would have been possible.
I mean, also, I know it's a small thing. It's going to sound like I'm joking, but I'm actually being serious. Ezio's old. When was the last
He
time
looks like Tony
you played a
Danza.
character
Anyone
of that
see it?
age? The original Splinter Cell, the
He's
first
Metal
one,
Solid
he was
4.
supposed to have had like
Metal
gray in
Gear,
his
yeah.
hair and looked
And
like
he's
George
the boss.
Clooney, and they said no, that doesn't hit well. You need to make him younger and more nimble.
Yeah.
I mean,
But old
He has
Snake was
facial
only
hair.
old because he was like had that. There's something wrong with him, right?
Yeah, he was
Yeah,
really
like that
old.
age
He was novelty old.
But does he play differently, or is it literally just like, oh, beards make people old?
well, I
No,
mean,
he
but
plays-
I'm
sorry,
assuming
but-
that he
He's
has,
not like.
he has the hook
I'll
shot.
talk to you later.
It's like a
Yeah,
sword
it's
with,
because
like,
he's kind of arthritic after years of doing
No,
what he has been
he's
Can't
doing.
be
not.
across this anymore.
You can only jump into hay bales from 40 stories up so many years
I'm
before you
actually
slow
guessing
down.
that
Takes
Ezio is
toll.
probably in this game. I'm guessing that he's like 40. Like I'm guessing that he's actually not
I'd
that
say a
old.
little older, actually.
I think that
Did
he's
you see that
looks
deer?
good.
He was
looks good
40
though.
and he
It was
had a
salt
hard
and
life.
peppery.
And it's just a memory.
He saw his dad die in front of him.
Well, look, in the grand scheme
Yeah,
of
he
things,
had a
so
hard
he
life.
did
And his
outlive the
brothers.
average life
happened
expectancy
to
of most
Batman,
people
too,
back
and
then.
he doesn't
so
look like he's
and he
50.
did some crazier than most people back then
He
too.
was
So
Dick, so-
he already
so-
won.
What's like the new game that everyone's like, wow, I can't wait for this new
All right,
franchise.
I was kind of
Nintendo
leading
has that
with
Wii
that
U
question
thing.
to get to that
There's
response.
basically one thing that got it. I mean, there's basically one piece of
And
news.
I feel that we also had this very same discussion last year.
Yeah.
And the year before that. I mean, I'm not saying that the industry is healthy. I mean, is unhealthy as a result of this. It's that we don't have that pop. And even the Wii U, because it was confusing,
Yeah.
we didn't
Yeah,
get that thing that we usually
disappointing,
wanted out of E3. We're almost out of time, but I wanted to just go around the table. Quick summation. How do you feel the industry is doing? Kevin Kelly.
I feel like we're starting to plateau,
Yeah.
and we're going to see what happens down the road with these handhelds. But with the Vita, I mean, and the Wii U, I don't think it's going to make the impact Nintendo wanted it to make.
I agree. We're kind of at a plateau right here. I think we need new consoles. I think that Nintendo they made a mistake with the Wii U, and I think that the fact that the games that we're the majority most excited about all in 3 says a lot about where games are going right now.
I would actually say that I don't think we need new consoles as much as we need new IP, and we just saw that this year. I know Microsoft is pushing the Kinect. They're trying to make us think that we have to have it. I'm not personally completely sold. Sony's really busy trying to make us all think we need to buy Sony 3D televisions. So they all have these sort of alternate agendas, and I think what would really help everyone is just a little bit of new IP.
A little focus on games.
Yeah.
Eric?
I don't want to buy any new hardware. I just want to use the hardware that I have and get the best experience out of it. So yeah, I want new games, or I want my existing games to take advantage of what I have available for it already. So not seeing as much of that in the show. Hopefully that will come.
To everyone's point, the funnel cakes this year were magnificent.
There are funnel cakes?
But there's no new funnel cake
Games
IP,
are
which is a
impressive.
mistake.
3D funnel cakes.
Yeah, I agree with all of you. I don't so much. I don't want new consoles. I just want that sense of excitement that tends to happen around new consoles. But the fact is, we saw a new console,
Yeah.
and I don't have a sense of excitement around
It's
it.
not new.
I think the industry needs to look a little bit inwards. I think they all need to go see the BioShock
Reflect.
Infinite demo and a couple of other things that kind of remind you that when you can do something that feels like magic, that gets people excited. That's what's healthy for the industry.
Agreed.
All right, we will be doing this again next week with headphones on our head and not at the shiny table. It'll be a lot messier. But I want to thank all of our guests: Eric, Blair, Morgan, Nicole, and Kevin. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
D3's almost over, so you can find me in a gutter. Until next week on Feedback.
Hi, I'm Craig. Today, some smart dudes performed a fuel economy test on the Honda Fit and the Ford Fiesta. It was all official and boring, so I decided to do it myself. All right, let's go to the track.